Hello my dirty little dumplings and welcome back to Brian Abroad. So it's been a while since I've been on here, sorry about that. If you are following my channel then you know that I was kind of in the middle of a series about my trip to Singapore and I never finished editing those videos. Unfortunately I ran out of time and then it was summer vacation, I went home to America. I've been trying to make this whole costume for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party this year and I bit off way more than I can chew. Pro tip, if you don't know how to sew, don't commit yourself to sewing a whole costume from scratch because it's not gonna go great. Now I will finish those videos eventually, I swear, so if you're interested in that content, stick around. I'll try to get them out soon. Today, I just wanted to sit down for a minute and talk to you guys about something else that's been on my mind lately, which is America's premier Halloween event, Halloween Horror Nights. This year, Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando is celebrating its 33rd year of fear. In those 33 years, Halloween Horror Nights has cemented itself as the place to be for spooky season. Not just in Orlando, but in Hollywood, Singapore, Japan, and now even in Beijing with its Scares at Universal event. This year in Beijing, they're bringing Jack and Chance to Universal Studios, and I'm super excited to see how they're gonna translate that to a Chinese audience. Now, I'm not a famous theme park blogger, so take everything that I say today with a large grain of salt, but I am someone who is a theme park fan. I'm a huge Halloween and horror enthusiast, and for more than 10 years, I was actually a haunted house actor at two of the biggest haunted attractions in New England, Spooky World and Fright Kingdom, so I do know quite a bit about theme parks and the haunted house industry. And I also know quite a bit about Halloween Horror Nights, and after following along with speculation season this year, I find myself asking one question. Yo HHN, you good? It just feels like everything that I've seen this year is like a weird budget cut soup. It's like one of those IG reels where everyone at work brings in a different candy to make candy salad. But before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about my experience with Halloween Horror Nights. So I'm a 90s kid. I grew up watching all the commercials on TV as a kid and just thinking Halloween Horror Nights looks like the coolest event ever. Especially after they started creating their own icon characters and creating ad after unsettling ad. Unfortunately, we were not the kind of family that took yearly trips to Orlando. My mom was a single parent with lots of kids to raise, money was tight, and I never got the chance to go as a child. And even as an adult, I was really busy with work and school, and then I moved to China. So my first time actually going to the event, even though I'd followed it year in and year out on the internet, on YouTube, and so on, was actually last year. And I have to say, although I did have fun, of course, it didn't really live up to what I envisioned HHN would be like after years and years of following it in media. I was expecting to really just be like completely blown away, and what I actually found when I got there was very, very long lines with nothing to really do while you're waiting in line. Even with doing Stay and Scream, it's a 100-minute wait. We decided to use our Express Pass after all. This line is out of control. If you don't have Express Pass, I just don't understand. You're gonna end up seeing like 3 houses, and I'm from China, I don't have that time. Being conged through all the haunts with no time to really stop and take anything in, and some pretty convoluted storylines. Storylines that don't really translate to your everyday guest, but maybe are easily digestible for the diehard fans. And it kind of seems like HHN 33 is following in HHN 32's footsteps. First of all, as a kid, everything I really needed to know about the icon characters was pretty well translated to me in the ads. I understood that Jack was a homicidal clown. I got that the caretaker was an undertaker who cuts people up, kills them, etc. I understood that the director was a creepy dude who makes snuff films with unwilling participants. Fast forward to HHN 32 and we get Dr. Oddfellow. He probably has the most convoluted storyline for an icon that I have ever heard. First, he's Indiana Jones and he's going through the jungle of doom looking for the crystal skull. Then he's like a demented circus ringleader who's obsessed with the dark zodiac, whatever that is. Then he gets murdered, but he's immortal, so he comes back and he infiltrates this like vampire organization to try to become the leader of it so that he can get the vampires to kill people at a 60s hippie music music festival? Like, what is going on? The whole thing just feels like unnecessary to me. Like they're doing too much. There's like a saying here in China, it's called like hua she tianzu. It's like you drew a snake and you added feet to it. Like you're just doing the most. And the sad part is that like unless you listen to the Universal podcast or you scan the Halloween Horror Night wiki, both of which I do, you're not really gonna pick up on the story the way that I think Universal expects you to. Instead, you might find yourself walking through the Vamp 69 scare zone asking, why are there hippie vampires everywhere? Which I actually heard on multiple occasions while I was there last year. Fast forward to HHN 33, and we have Sinister and Surreal, and their scare zone, the duality of fear. The whole thing already doesn't really make sense because they have threes in their name, because it's Halloween Horror Nights 33, even though Universal refuses to actually put that on literally any of the merchandise. It all looks like you went to Halloween Horror Nights 24 from 9 years ago. There's two icons. There's a scare zone about duality. Everything is about twos, but threes. So who are Surreal and Sinister? Well, if you watch the teaser for this year, you'll see an archway with an eyeball that people online call Otis. But if you keep watching, you'll see this bat creature that it's not Sinister or Surreal, but they're icons. So surely there must be some video announcement or some really cool advertisement. No. But if you use Twitter, you can check the Universal Halloween Horror Nights account and you can scroll through the essay that they wrote about them to get people really excited. Not very iconic if you ask me. And so far the props that I've seen online that have made it into that scare zone are not super impressive in my opinion. It looks like they took some like leftover tentacles from Vecna from last year's Stranger Things house, painted them purple and glued them to a platform. In fact, I don't really feel that any of the scare zones that I've seen so far are that exciting. I know that a lot of people online are really excited and freaking out about the Swamp of the Undead, and they're like, oh, the details, the details. But it kind of just looks like Dr. Oddfellow was having a yard sale in the Jungle of Doom scare zone from last year. Like even his underwear are there. Like that whole area, there's tons of stuff, but it kind of feels like they were like, okay, what can we pull from the warehouse so that we don't have to spend any extra money and we can just like throw it all in one place. Torture Fair does have quite a bit of interesting props, it seems, and I'm hoping that once the actors are there and they're doing their thing, that area really comes to life and looks really cool. But other than that, I'm not particularly impressed with anything that I've seen so far. Which brings me to the Tribute Store this year. I actually have two complaints about the Tribute Store. The Tribute Store at Universal Halloween Horror Nights is well known for its over-the-top theming. There was one year where it was set up like a dark ride or a ghost train where you can kind of follow the path that the car would take through the store. Last year it was set up like you're going into a horror comic, and this year the theme is trash. Like actually trash. So recently, photos of the store's facade have appeared online, and the facade is a shipping container with terrible graffiti all over it. And on top, there's some scaffolding with some ripped up garbage bags on top. Maybe they're gonna add more to this, although the team member preview I think was today and I didn't see anything different, but maybe they're gonna add something to it and it's gonna look a lot cooler. But right now it just looks like something from the neighborhood where I grew up, but with like less meth and worse graffiti. Apparently this year the theme of the Tribute Store is like going through some decaying post-apocalyptic, maybe like rundown urban environments. But my first gripe is that like it just doesn't look very good or inspired. It looks dangerous. My second issue is that in Sahara Traders by the Mummy Ride, they've been teasing what's coming to the Tribute Store with all these newspaper clippings and QR codes that you can scan that will lead you to different journal entries about a museum and the artifacts that have gone there, and things have gone missing, things have been damaged. There's this bat idol that's coming in that's allegedly haunted, and then the bat idol disappears, and all of these different journal entries and newspaper articles tie back to the Tribute Store. My question is, unless you're a theme park blogger who lives in the parks and makes videos every day about Universal, who is this for? Who can actually go and keep track of this? How does this information reach the average guest who isn't just like chronically online and who isn't one of the 6 people that everyone gets all of their information from the parks about on YouTube? This is the same problem I had with Dr. Oddfellow. This is the same problem I'm having with Pain and Panic, or whatever the hell their names are this year. year, Universal is creating a situation where really only the most die-hard fans can even follow the plot, and I just don't know if that's fair for the price that you pay to enjoy the event, because you're not really enjoying it to the fullest. But even then, the plot doesn't really make sense.
Earlier when we were walking through the Vamp 69 like disco hippie scare zone, I heard one of you guys be like, I don't understand like what this has to do with Halloween basically. So I'm kind of curious to see, like, especially with the Darkest Deal, do you feel like you understand the storyline of what was happening?
You're like in a Louisiana bayou and they jazz you to hell.
For example, the first few pieces of merchandise that we saw way back in the spring were like very punk rock, very 90s, skulls, mohawks, safety pins, spray paint, and everyone was thinking like, oh, is this the new theme for this year? Is this the new icon? Is it like a skeleton punk situation? Then we get the ad with Otis and the bat. Okay, so how does this connect to the 90s skull punk thing? Is the bat the icon? Is Otis the icon? Like, what's going on? Then we find out that one of the scare actors in Slaughter Cinema 2, I'm from Boston and it was really hard for me not to say Slaughter Cinema, but anyway, then we find out that one of the scare actors in Slaughter Cinema 2 is Skull Punk guy, but he's not an icon. So like, why does the merchandise almost seem to fit this character more than it fits anything else that we've seen so far? Why does it seem like the tribute store almost ties in more with that than Sinister and surreal? But then the tribute store is actually connected to a museum and this bat relic, so how the heck does that fit in? It just feels kind of like a big mess. And along the lines of big messes, it seems like Universal is actively using a lot of like terrible AI art this year. They got caught using AI art in some of the house announcements. They got caught using some like really anatomically incorrect AI art for the Wanna Hanta Fanta bar booth thing that they set up recently. Then when they're not using AI art and they're actually like making their own designs in-house, they create signs like this for the HHN bar that were definitely made with like the chiller font on Microsoft Word, and it's just a black and white image. Not to mention like whatever this artwork is, but whatever it is, it just doesn't really feel like a lot of like time and effort is really being spent on like designing these things and like pulling them together in a cohesive way. Also, I am not an IP fanatic. I would rather have 10 creepy original houses that feel like horror, feel like Halloween, than a whole bunch of IPs that I don't really even care about. But I do have to say that this year seems pretty disappointing for IPs. Insidious and Ghostbusters, which have already been at the parks in the past in one form or another, A Quiet Place, and Universal Monsters, which I don't really even count that as an IP because it's Universal's own property that they've owned forever, and they always have a Universal haunt every single year. So it's very well expected that this is something that is going to be at the park each season. There really aren't any like heavy hitters of horror here in my opinion, and when the first rounds of speculation maps were coming out online, there was a rumor that A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger was going to have his own house, and then I don't know if that was just completely incorrect or if it fell through or what, but I do feel like if that was supposed to happen, and obviously now it's not, that is kind of a big blow to the IPs that they have for this year. Another thing is like at the time that I was like putting together what I wanted to say for this, Universal had not released anything about the food or drink options there. In the time between that I sat down and put my thoughts down on paper and actually sat down and filmed the video, they did finally release all the food and drink options online. But last year they did this whole Taste of Universal thing that everyone was going to, where they had all the food booths set up and they had all the food for you to try, and everyone was going and vlogging about it, and everything looked really cool, and a lot of the presentation, especially for the Last of Us items, was really out of this world. And then this year, it's like 5 days before it opens, they just announce a list online, which feels like a bit of a downgrade in comparison to what happened just a year ago. I'm not an expert, I have no insider information, but my sentiments do echo a lot of what I've seen from some other people online who just feel like with Epic Universe coming and the potential of there being a much bigger HHN next year because of the Dark Universe kind of tie-in, that it feels a little bit like a lot of the budget for this year may have been cut. Just just a little bit. Now, I know a lot of this feels very negative, and I'm sorry for that. If you love HHN, which a lot of people do, myself included, I can understand where you might get to a certain point in this video and just be like, who are you? Shut up. I get it. It doesn't come from a place of hate. It comes from a place of love. I love this event. I've been following this event for years. I will be there this October. I'm flying all the way from China so that I can go. So I'm not trying to just like crap all over Universal. Plus, I'm not just here to complain. I actually do have some suggestions based on what I've experienced last year and what I've seen online this year that I think would make Halloween Horror Nights a better experience for everybody. As someone that worked in local haunts without quite the reputation as Universal, there are just some things that we're doing in that industry that I feel like could really, really benefit a larger scale event like Halloween Horror Nights. Although I understand that some of these suggestions will create some like logistical obstacles, and a lot of people will probably say like, oh, that's impossible, it could never happen. But I'm just gonna put out there that I have 5 different recommendations that I think could improve Halloween Horror Nights just a little bit. The first suggestion is to add line actors. HHN without the Express Pass seems pretty brutal. I didn't have that experience because I did buy the Express Pass last year and I bought it again this year after seeing what the real lines actually look like. We, even with the Express Pass, were waiting sometimes 30 minutes to get into a house. The wait for Stranger Things and The Last of Us especially were like 2 hours, and waiting in those lines, there's really nothing for you to do. There's no line actors, there's no food, there's no drinks, there's no even like decorations. You're just in the back in all these different queue lines where all the sound stages are. There's literally nothing for you to do. When I was a haunter, I was a walk around character. We bring the scare zone to you. If you're getting food, I'm gonna pop out at you. If you're waiting in line, I'm gonna walk through the whole line to scare you. And even if I don't scare you, at least I'm gonna entertain you because I'm gonna scare someone else and you're gonna laugh, or I'm gonna talk to you and it's gonna be this exchange going on, and it's gonna put your mind off the fact that you're waiting and waiting and waiting with nothing to see and nothing to do. And I know that like when IP is involved, you wanna be careful in case a less experienced actor goes out into the line and says something or does something that that character wouldn't do. But in my mind, it's not any different from having Shaggy and Scooby-Doo walking around the park, or the Blues Brothers, or Beetlejuice. You can find a qualified actor who can protect the IP, who can put on a good performance, who can scare people in line. And if safety is an issue, because I understand that, I've been hit, sometimes people get scared, it happens by accident, sometimes it's someone's drunk and it happens on purpose. I've had people try to like take my clown nose off. I've had everything happen in the past couple years. I'm sure they could hire some extra security maybe to keep a safe distance, walk through the lines. Maybe it's impossible, but I still think that having line actors would make the experience for everybody who's waiting 1 hour, 2 hours to get into these haunts so much better. And I also get that there is cost associated with hiring people, but have you seen how many people are waiting in line? Have you seen how many tickets are being sold each season? I think Universal can afford it. Number 2, sell fewer tickets. I know that that's stupid to say out loud, right? Obviously it's a business. They're gonna sell as many tickets as they can. They're gonna make as much money as possible. I get it. I know that that is like completely unrealistic, but here's the deal. You go to HHN, you're super excited, you get in line for a big IP house like The Last of Us, you wait 2 hours to get in, and it turns out that the line that you've been waiting in for 2 hours is also the line that you're gonna be stuck in as you get conga lined through the entire house. And if you try to stop to smell the roses or take anything in for even longer than a second, someone with a flashlight is going to be telling you like, move ahead, move ahead, move ahead. And it's like, girl, I flew here from China, like, give me a break. Maybe the solution is not tickets, but that like they just need to be better about counting people off and like giving them some time to space them apart from the group in front of them. Because what happens is you're super close to the other groups. You see the group ahead of you triggering all the scares. You don't get scared because you've already seen everything and you're like, oh, that's great for those people there. Maybe HHN is already doing that, you know, counting people off, waiting a minute, 2 minutes, letting the next group in. But in my memory of the event, I didn't really experience that. It just felt like we moved, we got to the door, we kept going, there's people in front of us, there's people behind us, and it was really like we never left the line. Maybe I just went on like a very busy night, but even with Express Pass, I just felt like the conga line. I felt it. And basically being stuck in the line from the beginning of the portal to the exit is just not really an enjoyable experience. Number 3, don't do cast changes actors in front of guests. So we have a rule in the haunt industry that you never break character. The only time you should ever break character is if there's some sort of emergency. For example, my very first year of haunting, this teenage boy got so scared that he ran into a wall and thought he broke his nose. It wasn't actually my scare, it was something else. So he like stumbles into my room and I jump out from behind this like coffin and I'm trying to scare them. And the girl that he's with is like, my friend is hurt. We think he broke his nose. Like, what should we do? I mean, there's emergency exits everywhere. Obviously this situation calls for breaking character. So I had to get out from behind my little coffin and I'm a zombie and I'm walking him like through the house to the emergency exit. And I brought him out and I left him with like the little medical tent that we have. And I went back in and, you know, got behind my coffin. That's fine. But like, if I'm a walk around character and I'm wandering around the park and someone's like, do you know how to get to the cemetery? I'm gonna hiss at you and like run off and scare the next person. I'm not gonna be like, well, actually, you're just gonna go down. I'm a monster. Like, I'm not gonna do that. As soon as you do something where people can now like locate the human aspect of you, you're just a dude in a costume, which like isn't really that scary. And while we were at Universal last year for Halloween Horror Nights, we actually experienced 2 cast changes. Once was, I think, at the Yeti house, or we were in line for Stranger Things and all the like Yeti actors or the Dueling Dragons actors like walked by us and we could see them all and they were like waving at us. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then the second time we were in line for Dr. Oddfellow's house and like all the actors came by with their little like Walmart like druid costumes and you could see like their like iPhones and their little like Stanley cups and they just like walked by like this whole assembly line of like 20-25 people and it just like kind of takes you out of the moment and it just feels very like off-putting. It's very illusion breaking. I'm sure that with the space Universal has and the budget and the know-how, they can figure out a way to do these cast changes like through a back door or behind closed doors and not like directly in front of the guests because again, it just kind of takes you out of the moment and ruins the illusion a little bit. Number 4, ditch the icon. I know this is a controversial and garbage take and that anyone who's a fan of Halloween Horror Nights would be like, how on earth could you suggest this? But just hear me out, okay? The icon needs to be either ditched completely or just overhauled to the point where it's basically just a glorified host. There are many years where the whole icon thing was done very well. Especially, was it HHN 17 where Jack was the icon and he essentially was like enlisting the services of Jason and Freddy and Leatherface. So then like all the houses kind of tie in and Jack is there and it makes sense. It mostly makes sense. But as the years go on, it seems less and less cohesive. Even when things tie in, it still doesn't really make sense. Like last year, Dr. Oddfellow had 3-4 different scare zones and a haunted house and he was the icon. So maybe that part makes sense, even though the story itself just is bonkers and doesn't make any sense. But then it's like, okay, but why is Stranger Things here? Why is The Exorcist here? Why is The Last of Us here? How does that relate to the other half of everything that's going on? It never really seems to make sense. And in my mind, it's like either all or nothing for me. So like, I don't really want half the park to be connected and another half to not be, because then it just feels like something is wrong, something's missing. At your local haunt, you're going to get a lot of unrelated houses in one place. There's the clown house, there's the zombie house, there's like the backwoods colony of mutant people that you don't want to accidentally stumble into when your car breaks down. And it's just kind of like generally understood that it's a whole bunch of randomness and nobody questions it and everyone has a good time and then you go home. At HHN, they usually try so hard to make it seem like everything is connected, except for this year where literally nothing makes sense. And at one point or another, we thought there were like 4 different icons going on, like Otis, the Bat Monster, maybe Jack was back when we saw like the underground prison cell looking thing in the beginning of the trailer. Then we thought it was Major Sweets and it turns out everyone was wrong and now it's sinister and surreal. But then there's like a bat and skeleton punk people and there's a whole lot going on. I think a better use of the icon would be like to give them a backstory where it just kind of mentions like how they came to be at Halloween Horror Nights and how they kind of like amassed this collection of horrific and macabre original houses and IPs and different monsters and creatures to torment and terrorize the guests at Halloween Horror Nights. We are sinister and surreal and we've been conjured from our realm by the screams of HHN goers, and on the way We brought that Darth Maul guy from Insidious and Bill Murray with us. Basically, it would be like Universal's version of the Hocus Pocus Spelltacular from Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, where the Sanderson sisters are just like, oh, frightful friends. It's really like the only way that having an icon character makes sense and still kind of feels cohesive without trying so hard to make it look like it makes sense, but then only making it make sense for half the park. Number 5, overhaul the marketing. This one is big. I feel like HHN marketing has really fallen off since I was a child, glued to the TV every fall, looking at the ads and thinking that HHN looked so amazing. Now I have to go through a whole speculation season, a whole series of podcast releases, Twitter posts, YouTube videos, and still after 4 months of that, I still don't really feel as excited as when I was a kid watching one commercial. And this isn't a simple fix. There are several things that need to be done. First of all, the marketing that is done should be accessible to everyone and not just people with a camera who live at the parks. Don't give me daily newspaper updates in a store. Don't give me QR codes where I have to go and scan and follow for journal entries. Don't give me that. Give me things that I can digest no matter where I am in the world, so that I feel like when I get there, I have just as much of the story as everybody else. I shouldn't need to be like an annual pass holder to understand the story of a haunted house. I just don't get it. Give me a functioning website that has video teasers and activities and actually like updates the descriptions of all the houses as they're announced, which they weren't really doing this year. There was a huge chunk of time where they announced like 6 houses, but the website still hadn't really been updated at all with any of the information that was readily available on social media and on YouTube and all these different places. Also, make videos for the non-IP houses. Why is it only IPs that get a video? The videos are exciting. The videos are cool. I want to see a video about Triplets of Terror. I want to know what's going to happen when I go to Goblin Feast. Yeah, I could sit through a podcast that's kind of like a glorified screensaver and listen to people tell me a story, but like one short, well done 30-second video on your website can also basically get me excited without needing all of that. Also, if we're still gonna do the whole icon thing, we just need to make them feel like a bigger deal. I don't wanna find out about them through a 4-tweet thread on Twitter. Make a video for them. Do little teasers with them. Have them walk around the park in the off season to generate excitement, like what they did with Jack before he made his debut for Halloween Horror Nights 10. When Alien Romulus came out recently, they had people lying down in the streets with face huggers on them. At some of the screenings, they had people with like chest bursters bursting through their chest in the audience before the movie started. That's great marketing. Imagine that you're at the Hollywood makeup show at Universal Studios, and at the end when all the actors are doing their goodbye and the monster's, been killed by the actor, all of a sudden like the lights flicker and Sinister and Surreal come out unexpectedly, much to the shock and confusion of the actors, and drag them away. And a voice comes over like, all right, everyone, we need to get out. We need to get out. Like, that would be so much cooler than a Twitter post. There's so many things you can do, and I just feel like they're not really doing it. Again, I'm aware that things have cost. Videos, advertisements, websites, hiring actors, all these things have a cost associated with them. But if you're as passionate about your event as you always say you are whenever you make these appearances at all these different horror conventions and podcasts and so on, then you need to invest a little bit more money to make your event better and make your guests happier. For a company that really prides itself on always being a year ahead, oh, we're already working on HHN 25. Sorry, that's the merchandise's fault. We're already working on HHN 34, and we haven't even opened the gates yet on HHN 33. It's kind of shocking to me how so many things about this particular year kind of feel like an afterthought, which is also why I do kind of find it frustrating when I see the creative minds behind Universal go on different podcasts and go to different horror conventions and talk up how they're pushing the envelope forward and they're doing things that you've never seen before and it's going to be so amazing. And then this is the kind of stuff that we actually get.
How does the entire event, as far as the houses and the scare zones, because we're going to be talking about all of that in this episode, how does that play into maybe the fact that we have Sinister and Surreal?
Well, if you really truly think about it, physical horror and psychological horror and the twisted and demented horror. That can fill every bucket of all the content we do.
Like, really? That's the story? That's the tie-in? I know that, again, this probably feels really negative. I don't mean for it to feel that way. It comes from a place of love. I swear, I'm a very loving guy. Whatever. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that, again, I'm passionate about this event. I'm passionate about anything to do with Halloween, really. I will be flying 7,000 miles so that I can go to this, and I'll make a video and I'll give you my whole full review like I normally would, and I'll be very honest because I live 7,000 miles away, so it's not like I need to get on a media list somewhere. And I'm sure that when I'm actually there experiencing the event, I'll think it's amazing. I'm very Halloween deprived here, other than Universal, which just started its first Halloween event last year. It's been very dry here for anything spooky, and the ambience at HHN alone is very, very hard to beat. You're at like a Halloween wonderland in an amusement park. Like, what is cooler than that? But at the same time, I do hope that like moving forward, the event can get better and give me more of like that feeling back that I used to have before I actually went for the first time and thought that it was just gonna be perfection. And just in general, by the 33rd year, I just feel like, all right, the quality should really be going up and up and up. Especially it should be better than the previous year. But this year does feel like just a little bit like a downgrade, I'm not gonna lie. What do you guys think? Are you excited about this year? Do you already have your tickets? What are you most excited about? Do you agree with any of these changes? Do you think it's just completely wild of me to even suggest it? Are there things you agree with? If you see this video and you're out there somewhere in the vast, let me know by commenting below. And if you like this video and you want to see some of my other videos, which occasionally are about Halloween, occasionally about Universal, Halloween Horror Nights, Beijing Universal, or life in China, traveling around Asia, consider subscribing to my channel. So anyway, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe, but if not, no pressure. Anyway, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.